Fellas, I think it's time we really start talking about this. Here's the Blues DeVille killer, otherwise known as the Peavey Classic 50. The Peavey Classic is a 50-watt all-tube amplifier made in Massachusetts. I really think that this amp was ahead of its time and a completely misunderstood amp for the last 30 years. So I spent the last couple days doing a bunch of research, trying to go on forums, go on YouTube, trying to see if there's anyone who can really deep dive into these amplifiers. And it seems like a lot of folks are misinformed. So I'm going to try to do my best with the knowledge I've had, considering I've owned this amp for like the last 10 years. So first things first, it's a 2-channel amplifier. You got your normal clean and you got your lead tone. You have a presence knob and you have a master volume. You got a very responsive 3-band EQ. You have an amazing spring reverb. You have these highly misunderstood post and pre knobs. I'll get to these in a sec. You have a volume knob for your normal channel. This is great when you're switching between both channels. That way you don't have a dip in volume. And in typical Tweed fashion, you have a bright input and you have a normal input. These knobs to me define the tone of a Peavey Classic. Let me explain what they do. The pre knob is the primary gain control for your lead channel. Think of this as the gain knob that you would find on a Blues DeVille or on a BASSBREAKER. Turning up your pre-knob is going to saturate your preamp tubes. All this means is that you're going to get distortion. So if we can agree that this is saturating the preamps, then what the hell is this doing? So my theory, even though I haven't been able to find anyone to help me confirm this, is that this is saturating your power tubes. So aside from the obvious logic, the only reason why I really think this is because the way the amp reacts the moment you start to crank this knob up. So most people are going to tell you that when you crank this post knob, you're just going to get volume. And while that's true, it's doing something much more important. Not only do you get more volume, you get an additional level of saturation, and more importantly, you get compression. That makes the post knob the most important knob in this entire amplifier. Anyone who's a fan of Queen will tell you that the secret to Brian May's amazing lead tones is his AC30's power tubes being pushed to their absolute limits. You have that ability with just one knob. So before anyone tells me that boosting the post would make this amp unusable, you have to remember this is a master volume amplifier. You could bring this down, bro. That's why it's here. So really what I'm getting at is the thesis to my argument. The combination of the post and pre knobs lends itself to create the most versatile amplifier that Peavey's arguably have ever made. So the best way I can describe this, especially to like my friends who've had to borrow this amp on multiple occasions, is think of the pre as your distortion, and then think of the post as your feel. When this baby is fully cranked, the best approximation I can describe this would be the 90s custom Fender Vibro King. Those amps are incredibly squishy, and I would argue that diming the post on this amp kind of gets you in that territory. So let me give you guys just a breakdown on how I like to set up this amplifier so it could kick ass in like basically any situation. So quick fun fact, presence knobs are essentially kind of like a tone control for your power amp section. So the more you crank your post, the more this is going to have an influence on your sound. I like to leave this right in the middle, and then right at the end, once you kind of finalize everything, you could kind of just tweak how much of this presence you want. In regards to the volume, this is purely subjective. I like keeping it around 6, maybe 7. EQ is always going to be subjective, right? Depending on the type of guitar and your rig or whatever. Start everything at noon or at 6, right? Because that's the halfway point, and just adjust to taste, right? So once you've got that taken care of, this is how I recommend you to go about your post and pre knobs. So trust me when I say the first thing you should do is crank this thing all the way. Do it all the way. Don't be shy. Do it all the way. Okay. And once you do that, go ahead and set your drive. As a matter of fact, make it a little more dirty than you would like. So if you're here at 4, maybe push it to 5. The reason why I say this is because more times than not, you're probably not going to be okay with it being dimed. And that's perfectly fine. Once you have this established, I want you to go ahead and like look back on your EQ and make those adjustments, right? Maybe you say, oh, it has too much bass. Maybe you need to scoop the mids, or maybe it needs a little more mids, right? And then maybe the treble is already like, maybe it's too dank, or maybe, whatever. Once you have that taken care of, I want you to pull this back until your guitar feels the way you want it to feel. So again, I like to tell my homies, this is your overdrive, this is your distortion, and this is going to be your feel. So when I ask you guys to kind of push it a little higher than what you normally would, the reason for that is because more times than not, you're not going to want it at 12. And so when you start to pull this back, not only will you lose some of that compression, you'll lose a little bit of volume, and you're going to lose some of the saturation. So basically, it kind of cancels out that little extra boost that you did. And then lastly, if the post ends up down here or something, just go ahead and readjust your volume, and then you'll finally be able to kind of tinker with this presence to finally see where you want your guitar to sit. So for those who have waited, there's a reason why I like to call this the original BASSBREAKER amplifier. And that has everything to do with the power tubes. For whatever reason, the team at Peavey at the time decided they wanted to go with EL84s in the power section, just like the BASSBREAKERs of today. One fun fact that I learned while researching this amplifier is that the creator is the same guy who created the 5150. So if you want to know why these amps create such great saturated tones, well, now you know. This has been my workhorse for the last 10 years. It's had an amazing relationship with every guitar that I've brought. My pedal board has never struggled through this, and it's definitely something that I encourage everyone to get if you're trying to find an amplifier that can kind of do a lot of things at once. I would consider this like a Swiss Army knife of amps. Also, just thank you to everyone who's been thugging it out for the last 8 minutes. I really appreciate all the support and all the love you guys have been showing me. This is something I'm really passionate about, and I'd like to continue doing this long term. So please like, comment, repost it. Feel free to follow me. If you guys have any questions regarding gear, hit me up. I'm super down to try to help you guys out in your tone quests and stuff. This is something I'm really passionate about, and I can't do it without your guys' support.